Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Secret Art of Business. And I am so excited to have Sarah Lagrotteria on on the show. I want to make sure I got that right because I just that's a thing for me. Um, but I'm so glad to have you on the show because you really do a lot of work in exactly what we're talking about here. I mean, we're gearing this towards obviously business owners and people who've had success with their business, but you're even taking it a step further with your business that's called Just Bloom. You've
Yes.
had that about a year.
Mhm.
I looked and saw, so what you've kind of done prior to that, which is, I think, its own interesting journey too. But here you are now. But I'm going to start with where were you when you were a kid? What did you think you were going to be when you grew up?
Yeah. Well, first, Catherine, thank you for having me. I love that you do this podcast and I love that you're talking about creativity. And it's such a fun question to answer. I always wanted to be a writer, 100%, whether it was writing for National Geographic or
Oh,
writing novels. I always wanted to be a writer. I think there was a little time in there where maybe I wanted to be a painter, but even that was less about painting and more about the language of the colors and the language of painting. So it was always
wow.
language for me and always storytelling. Always wanted to be a writer.
Very, very cool. So let's talk about a little bit of that journey. We have little Sarah, the writer, as a kid. So how did you get where you are now? How did you get to do this?
Well, I went to graduate school to study narrative, to study literature. I was getting my PhD in the 19th century novel. And what we do now is a narrative theory of creativity. So our theory of creativity is really the first new theory since World War II. So if you've ever done ideation or brainstorming or design thinking, that all falls under the rubric of divergent thinking, which is the most commonly accepted theory of creativity since World War II. And that's what businesses have been investing in terms of creativity
Interesting.
training for their business. And but ours is a narrative theory, so it's based in story, and it's about what we call story thinking. So it's the stories you tell yourself in your own head. They don't have to actually be spoken out loud, but they're the stories that you think. And so for me, this was the dream place to end up because it's all about the power of story, which is what so enamored me as a child. So I think there are a lot of people like me who would be reading under the covers with their flashlight and always wondered as an adult, like, where did that magic go that used to grip me so strongly as a child? And I
Right.
think what we're doing with a lot of our creativity work is bringing back that magic and giving it to people. You don't have to find it in a book. You can create magic with the story that you're thinking in your own life. So for me, it's the dream landing spot.
I love that. Can you give me an example of how that might work?
In terms of like our
Like what
training,
would be like a typical um yes, yeah. So you get a new client and what's one of the first things that you do?
so the first thing we do is ask them, what are the specific opportunities and challenges that are facing you in their business, because we tailor our trainings to their challenges. So then what we would do is we would set up a very specific workshop for them, and we would start with an exercise that I call the shift to narrative. So it's a really simple exercise. It has nothing to do with their business.
Hmm.
We build towards their business. But the shift to narrative is simply asking you, okay, Catherine, think of someone you care about. It shouldn't be, if you have children, it shouldn't be your child. It should be
Hmm.
someone else, because people cannot be honest. Present companies included cannot be honest about their children. Pick someone you care about and describe them to me in 3 sentences. And you'll use a to be verb. So it would be Catherine is creative. Catherine is curious. Maybe Catherine is artistic. And then that's a logical way of looking at somebody. That's an equivalency. So then we
Hmm.
ask them,
Hmm.
I want you to take one of those sentences and substantiate it with very, very specific details about that person. So it's forcing you to start to think narratively. It would be considered a tell in a novel or a movie. What was the tell about this person that told you or showed you they were creative? Or artistic, whatever it is that you chose. And it really forces people to get granular with details and to build up very specific stories about that person. And since it's not about them, they can feel kind of free to do it. And it has them start thinking in story, and they start creating a character out of somebody that they knew. And that's how we get them to start activating their deep brain, which is where most of our creativity comes from.
I super love that because and why I think this fits so well with what I'm trying to do here is that I think for the most part we go to school, we're out in society, and people give so much credit to that logic side of our brain, you know, the one that's supposed to know math and, you know, a lot of the STEM things that people are pushing right now, which is why I think STEAM is way more important than STEM, because we do have to include the arts and things. But yeah, but just for people to understand, you shouldn't only exercise one arm. You know, you have to exercise both arms to be strong and to be whole and things like that. And really that creative side, in my opinion, is quite a gift, quite a talent. And in order to kind of trigger that, and I love that it's kind of what you're doing. It's like, okay, everybody, we're going to exercise your whole body right now and not just work on your one leg or your one whatever, you know, and they work together, and it's so important.
Yeah, we focus on it holistically.
That is so great. So let me ask this. Yes. Yes. That's it. That's exactly what it is. And like I said, I feel like the people that, you know, emphasize or aren't allowed to emphasize that creative side never get enough credit. Like they might have a great talent, and you probably remember this from writing, but it doesn't get necessarily the same respect as if you're like a stockbroker or something, you know? And it's just like, wait a second, this is actually more valuable in a way. It takes a lot more juice to do this, you know, than math, because that's all logical, you know? So
right. Education
that's why I really, really like this.
Yeah, education has not been shaped to privilege.
Exactly. Exactly.
And you see it even with the study of literature, because you read a book.
Then.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yes.
Oh, I was saying, you know,
we read a book. You're on the
you read a book in school instead of having it as like a launch pad to writing our own story or to thinking how we want to be as artists, then we're then asked to write a 5-paragraph essay making an argument, a logical argument about this piece of art. So suddenly even the study of art becomes reduced to logic. And you know, research, this isn't our research, this is research before us, shows that the longer we are in school, the less creative we get. So the longer we are in the education system, our creativity falls. And for us, for me particularly, that was a shocking thing to discover. It breaks your heart. And we also discovered that
I had thought about that, but
yeah, and it's
I had thought about that, but that is so freaking spot on. I'm thinking about like in my career, you know, granted, I pursued the higher education and got a specific degree in that, but along the way, you have to learn, you know, all this other stuff that may or may not be helpful in the future. Right. I love the idea of a higher education. Don't get me wrong, because I think, you know, if I got this far in math in high school, I need to take it one more step. You know, that's totally fine. But the fact that the creative part is not really emphasized. There's no requirements necessarily to tap into your writing skills that you might have that might help you in your career otherwise. So.
Right. And
that's really fascinating.
Tools aren't quite there yet in school, because I think what's sometimes getting missed is that creativity is what helps us build resilience. And we know that resilience is an indicator of success. People who are resilient succeed. And we are not training that. And the way we train resilience, you know, you don't want to just, you know, hope that someone has a bad thing happen to them and they rebound from it. You know, that's not how you want someone to become resilient. We can train for resilience. And the way we train for resilience is by teaching people to be creative. Because if we define creativity as the ability to solve complex problems, open-ended problems, the better you are able at doing that, the more resilient you are. And so that needs to be the goal in education, to look at it that way.
I am so girl fanning on you right now. It's ridiculous because this is so freaking cool. Now you had mentioned, because I want just so people can kind of understand this a little more. You had mentioned too that you could work with people who've been in the Army and stuff like that. So how does what you do work for people that have served?
Well, my business partner, and it's his theory of thing. He tests it all with the U.S. Army. So this is really how we started, was working with the U.S. Army and Special Forces specifically, and running our creativity training as studies with them. And he's actually written a field guide to creativity for the U.S. Army College. And so that's where a lot of this work began, was working with soldiers and helping them, again, be more agile in terms of solving these open-ended complex problems. And we do the exact same exercises that we do with the Army We do them with elementary school children, tweaked slightly, and then we do it with the business individuals, groups, organizations. So it's the exact same method of thinking in story. So whether we're building out characters or plotting out futures, world building, all the things that you studied when you studied literature, but suddenly pushed into the real world and focused on actual problems, specific real world problems that these groups are dealing with.
I think that is so cool. I really, because of the audience that I'm hoping to capture here, or perhaps already here, I want to know, how does this work for business then? You have, a company come in. Who would be like your ideal customer in a business?
I wish I could answer that. I don't have an ideal customer because we work with small local businesses. We work with Fortune 50 companies. We run the gamut because the brain science is the same. So it really, as long as they can tell us what their challenges are or what their opportunities are, we can apply the same methods to help them deal with it, whether they're a small business or a larger one. It just helps. It's a change in the way they're approaching their life, essentially. I mean, it truly has a ripple effect throughout, which is that suddenly you start to see, you start to feel a boost when you story think. Not only are you feeling more emotional and psychological resilience, but you have greater levels of self-efficacy. So what happens is the people we're dealing with when they're in business, they suddenly start to realize that they can solve their own problems. So it becomes, you see a lot of business owners, but also team members starting to take ownership of what it is they're doing. They become better listeners. So they start to be able to spot what we call spotting exceptional information, but they're spotting each other's exceptional strengths. So they suddenly start to understand that their team members have maybe more to offer than they first knew. So maybe we can deploy them in a different way. Maybe we can shift up the teams so that these problems are getting solved because person A, who maybe I always thought was good at this, is actually really good at this because I've learned now to listen to them and understand what their reason for being here is. So a lot of it's empathy-driven listening exercises, and a lot of it is actually what we call plotting, plotting, plotting forward what our future as an organization can look like, or our future as a team. If we make one small change, how does that change play out over the next 6 months? How does it play out over a year? And so it's not scenario building. So it's not, we're not saying that plot is the plot that we're going to use, but we're training these business owners and these managers or wherever they come from in the organization. We're training them to be planners so that when something does go wrong or there's volatility in the environment, they can trust themselves to make a plan. It's not that they've already built a plan and they filed it and they can pull it out. It's that they can continue to make plans fresh because they're good at it now and they trust their ability to do so. So that's the real nugget that they take away from the training, is that they are capable of making a new plan to deal with whatever comes their way. And if that plan doesn't work, they're capable of making another plan.
This is freaking amazing. And wow, so needed too. So before I forget, I have one other question for you, but before I forget, how can people find you?
Yeah, www.justbloomschool.com or on LinkedIn under Sarah Lagrotteria, and they can DM us, send us an email. That's the easiest way. And then we'll start the conversation, right away. And no business, like I said, no business is too small. No business is too big. The brain science stays the same. And we're doing a lot of work with elementary education now as well. So they can watch if they're interested in that, if they have children or if they are an educator. There will be more material coming out, some more studies coming out and what we've done with kids as well. Because we really focus on that intervention point, which is about age 9, when creativity starts to plummet. And so does self-confidence. And we think there's a way to train out of that and keep that going. Yeah.
I love it. So would I just be able to connect you with my daughter's school?
Yes, you absolutely. Yes, we are. We did
all of that.
We did a creativity. Yeah, we did a camp with Worthington Schools as a study this past summer, and we're going to start piloting the program here. And we're in Worthington with Worthington Schools, and with the hope that it can then be taken to other school districts and sort of built right into the curriculum.
I love it. Okay, yeah, I will keep an eye on you for that one. Yeah. All right. So my question to you, my last question is, all right, you're going about your day, you're changing people's lives, which, is super awesome. But is there anything that you do in just even 5, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 2 hours in your life that is still going back to maybe that writing skill or some other creative outlet that is a little bit of an escape, a little bit of vacation, a little bit of a respite? Is there something that you do?
I don't know if it's a respite, but it does. I think it's consistent with what we do at work. I am someone who is constantly just naturally thought in story. I take the time to notice the small things around me that I think sometimes other people ignore. I observe, I listen, and in my head, I'm always telling things as a story. It's just, I grew up reading, I grew up writing. My notes application in my phone is just filled with little paragraphs, little mini chapters that could be a book that could go further. And I constantly let that part of me be a part of the everyday because it gives me joy. And it's like a release valve. When you can think in story, you feel so full of optimism and potential. And I think for me, when you're doing that, whatever it is, the school run, the after school activities, and you're bogged down and dinner has to be made and there's laundry, that's the escape I have in my mind. And I don't really think of it as an escape. I just think of it as what I do. And it creates just a real sense of optimism and possibility for me. And that's really what we're going for in our training as well. So it's very, like I said, it is very synced. It's not very separate.
More people need to get to that space.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that, you're saying that, that's very natural for you, but I think there's a lot of people that really have kind of, and I like the analogy that I like to use is, like kind of when you're trying to train a dog, if you will, the leash is short, you want them close by, but man, when you take that leash off and open the gate, how free they feel. I think it's a lot like that. And honestly, they're not going to, they know that gate opens now, so they're going to run in the open field anytime that they have a chance, but you have to kind of know that that's okay. That it's okay to really live like that,
It's so amazing to me that's your metaphor, because I actually use that in my workshops, that when we have that feeling at the end of the day that we're restless, we've had a perfectly fine day, but we just feel a little restless or a little just unsatisfied at the end of the day. It's kind of when we think, well, maybe I want a glass of wine or I'm going to binge watch my favorite show, but then those things don't make us feel better. And a lot of times what that is it's your deep brain needs to be let out for a run, just like the dog. And so that's when you need to think in story. And so I always tell people, if you feel that way, do that little shift to narrative exercise I shared, or pick up a biography and read about someone who's different than you for 10 minutes. Then go binge watch your show and see if you feel better.
Great idea.
Because it's like, it's your deep brain is complaining. It's saying, let me out, just like that dog. And so let it out, let it think in story, let that creativity get triggered, and then go about your day. And you should, I would hope you would start to feel better if that's indeed what was happening. So.
Very, very cool. Everybody needs to know that deep brain. Let that deep brain run.
That deep brain, let it out.
This was so great. I cannot thank you enough for coming on and talking about this. I think it's going to be so helpful to people. And if they want to know more, they know how to find you now. And if nothing else, have a conversation with you and your team. If you feel like, your team might need just some help with, figuring out problems, and you want them to be, and this is such a gift for them too, I think, to allow them to figure out their own problems. So you're not always having to say, now what, with every email and every meeting, you have to be the one that can solve the problems. What if they came to you with a solution? I mean, it's a gift to yourself as a business owner or anything else.
Absolutely. Well, and it's a gift to them too, because they feel then that they have ownership and they're proud of what they're doing. So it's not dependency.
Oh my God.
It's independence and optimism and interdependence, but in a positive way. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Like I said, I cannot love this more. Thank you so much. So great meeting you. I'm hoping I see you out like at some event or something so we can talk more. And if not, maybe we just have to force an event and, get some coffee together or something. Cause I
would love to anytime.
I mean, your stuff's just going to get even better and better. And I'm going to want like a part 2 to this maybe. So
anytime. I would love to talk.
All right,
I love
thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Take care,
Catherine. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye-bye.